All right, everybody. I think we are about ready to get started. Can y'all hear me okay? Cool. All right. We are going to kick off our final project. This is going to be a solo project, and it is going to be due. It's going to be due on Tuesday evening, and we are going to do the evals for it on Wednesday. So if we go to the projects index, we've got this linked up here now. So if you haven't seen this, it should be up now. Yeah, so let's talk about this. This is going to be an extension of the group project that we all just did and looked at together. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be implementing a feature for merchants to add bulk discounts to their items. So in a bulk discount is one that is based off of a quantity of items that a customer buys. For example, 20% off of 10 or more items. Learning goals, this shouldn't be anything new here. This is really the point of this project, and most of your final projects are to kind of like take everything that we've done this mod, the core content that we've been teaching and iterating and challenging your understanding on, really do it all again and just show us that you are coming out of mod 2 with a solid understanding of these principles and these concepts. So the concepts are migrations to create a table. So we are going to have, you are going to have to like edit your schema somehow to get this feature to work. Implementing CRUD functionality for a resource using forms, buttons, and links. You should be applying your MVC principles to organize code effectively and limit the amount of logic that's in your views and controllers, trying to push logic off onto your models. Use those built-in active record methods to join multiple tables of data, make calculations, group based on one or more attributes. This is really the advanced active record part of it. And then testing. So we want to write model tests that are going to fully cover that data logic, as well as feature tests that are going to fully cover the features of the application or the functionality. So this project is going to be an extension of your group project. You have two options. So if you finished your group project, then you can just use that as a starting point for your for this project. So if you're not the repo owner, what you should do is you should fork it. So if like Tim and I are in a group, Tim was originally forked the main Turing repo, so he owns the repo, and I'm not working on, or I'm not the owner of the repo. I should fork Tim's version. I should fork Tim's repo, and that's my copy to start off with. If you are the repo owner, so Tim in this example, you can just use that repo as your starting point. The only note here is just make sure that all of your teammates get a chance to fork before you push up any commits. If you push up commits and you merge them in, and then your teammates fork, then they will get your commits. So we don't want anybody like sharing code on this project. So just make sure if you're going to use your same project that you're forking, that you're giving your teammates a chance to fork, you don't have to. Well, let me go over this next one. So if you didn't finish your group project, what you can do is you can use this repo as a starting point. And this repo was volunteered to us by Catherine and Sandra and Isabel. So this is a completed repo for you all to work off of. Now, if you really want to, if you want to work off this forked repo, even if you finished your little SD shop project, I'm okay with that. If you want to just use this version, that's totally fine with me. It is not the case that everybody in the group has to choose the same thing. Just make sure that if your group members, if you're the repo owner and your group members choose to use your group version, that you give them a chance to fork. Does anyone have any questions so far? We'll get into the specifics of the project next. Okay. Here's the rubric. Make sure that you are reading through the rubric so you know what we're expecting ahead of time. This is mostly what we have seen before, in the same way that the learning goals are most of the concepts that we've hit before. The rubric is going to hit most of those same concepts. So let's get into the actual criteria for bulk discounts. So bulk discounts are going to have a percentage discount and a quantity threshold. So in order to be eligible for a discount, an item needs to be ordered in that quantity. So if we have a bulk discount of 10 or more, 20% off 10 or more items, one item needs to be ordered in a quantity of 10 or greater. These bulk discounts should belong to a merchant. They are for a specific merchant. Your bulk discounts should not, from one merchant, should not affect another merchant. When a merchant makes a bulk discount, all of their items, that bulk discount applies to all of their items. And this is what I said before, bulk discounts from one merchant should not affect another merchant. Some of the requirements that we have in this project might seem a little off. For example, you might say like, well, shouldn't a merchant be able to say like, this item you can order 10 of and get 20% off, but this one, that's not applicable. Shouldn't they be able to like distinguish between items? And there are a couple things like that in that project, in this project, where you might think of like a more realistic way to do it. The reason we've written it this way is just to simplify it a little bit. We really didn't want to make it as like realistic as possible, because that would just make it overly complex. We wanted to simplify it. If you wanted to implement these in a like more advanced way, a more complex way, I would say like do that as an extension, get it to work this way first, and then go back and refactor. But this is just the reason why we simplified it, is to make y'all's lives a little easier. So merchants can have multiple bulk discounts in the system. So when an item meets the quantity for multiple bulk discounts, you'll just pick the one with the greatest percentage off discount. So the customer always gets the best deal. Bulk discounts are going to apply on a per item basis. So there's two sub bullets here. So the first one, if the quantity of an item ordered meets or exceeds the quantity threshold, the percentage discount should apply to that item only. Other items should not be affected. And you also can't add quantities together to meet a quantity threshold. For instance, if you have a quantity threshold of 10 items, 20% off 10 items or more, you can't order 5 of item 1 and 5 of item 2, add them together to make item 10. And again, that is just a simplification to make y'all's lives a little easier. And then we have some examples in here. I don't want to go into those examples just yet. First, I'm going to go into these user stories here. These are all the features that you should be building. So the first 5 of them are your basic CRUD functionality. So your bulk discounts index, your create, your delete, your show, and your edit. And then we have 3 additional stories here. So from the merchant invoice show page, a merchant should see that when the merchant sees the total revenue for an invoice, they should see that includes the bulk discounts in the calculation. Additionally, when a bulk discount applies to that revenue calculation, we should also see which specific bulk discount applied. So next to each invoice, I should see a link to the show page to the bulk discount that was applied, if there was one. If there's not, just don't show anything. And then the admin invoice show page is very similar. You should see when we're showing the total revenue, so the admin sees not just the total revenue for a specific merchant, the admin sees the total revenue for just the whole invoice. They should see that includes the bulk discounts. So on an invoice, you could have multiple merchants on that same invoice. So this brings up one point that I think was a little bit of confusion for some folks. The invoices have a merchant ID column on them. And that's a little bit confusing, because that indicates that an invoice that only one merchant can sell items on an invoice, but that's also not how the invoice items work. So an invoice can have multiple items, and items belong to a merchant. So in that way, an invoice can actually have multiple merchants on it. So what we're looking for in this case is that invoices can have items from multiple merchants, and each of those merchants have their own set of bulk discounts. So items are only eligible for discounts that belong to the merchant that sells that item. And then we've got some extensions for y'all. So these are open-ended. You have a little bit more freedom to decide like what exactly this should look like. The implications of creating these bulk discounts in the system are pretty wide reaching. You can think of a lot of different scenarios where this might break other functionality. These are three that we came up with, but there is probably a wide set of work that you could do on these bulk discounts. So the three that we came up with were when an invoice is pending, a merchant shouldn't be able to go edit or delete a bulk discount that applies to any of the items on an invoice. So the idea behind that is if I'm a customer and I order something and I see like, oh, this thing is discounted, the merchant shouldn't be able to go in there and say like, sorry, and then like pull the discount away from me. They shouldn't be able to like change it if I've already ordered an item. When an admin marks an invoice as completed, the discount percentage should be stored on the invoice item record so that it can be referenced later. So the idea here is that once the invoice is once it's completed and it's done with, we should be able to go back in time and see which discounts were applied to it. Now, in the same way that the invoice items store a unit price and the items store a unit price, you need to store this information in two different places. So you're going to have the bulk discount that has its quantity and percentage off, but you should also store on the invoice item itself the percentage off. The invoice item percentage off represents the snapshot in time of the discount. So discounts can change. We're adding in edit functionality for merchants. So what we wouldn't want to do is we wouldn't want to include like a bulk discount ID on an invoice item and link to a bulk discount, because if that discount changes, then that would rewrite history and change the price or the revenue generated from an invoice. So we don't want to do that. You want to store a snapshot of what the percentage discount off was at that moment in time that item sold. And then the final thing here is merchants should not be able to create or edit any bulk discounts if they already have a conflicting discount in the system. And it says here, see example 4. So there is a case where if you create a bulk discount, because you always pick the bulk discount with the highest percentage, you could create discounts where one discount would just never be valid because another discount would always be better than it. So one discount would always get picked over it. So this extension is adding in some sort of code to prevent merchants from creating or editing their bulk discounts to create that scenario. Okay, so that was everything that I wanted to be sure to communicate to you all. What questions do you have? Any questions on? So I didn't go over these examples specifically. So if you did read through these examples, feel free to ask questions on them right now. But if you haven't, I would highly recommend that you read through them and ask some questions. And if anything doesn't get answered in this session right now, we can always answer it in the Slack channels as well. Sydney.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So the discount is associated with the quantity threshold or the item? Because some of them sound like it goes with the item, and then when you read 4, it sounds like it goes with the threshold. So I just wanted to make sure I understand.
What do you mean by goes with?
For example, so in the other ones, item A gets if it meets its quantity threshold, it's getting that discount applies. Where an item or an example 4, both items meet the threshold, but because it's the 20%, they both get 20%.
Yeah, this is the criteria where you always pick the greatest percentage discount. So the reason why we're not seeing 15% is because so item B is ordered in a quantity of 15. It meets the criteria for bulk discount B, but it also meets the criteria for bulk discount A. And so because discount A has the greater percentage, we would pick discount A. So this creates that scenario where you would never pick discount B. If you ordered 15 items, then you're eligible for a 20% off discount. So you would never apply a 15% off discount. And you also, this brings up another point, you can't stack discounts. So you can't get like 20% and 15% off. You can only get one.
Okay, so at the beginning it says, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself, but it just says, if the quantity of an item ordered meets or exceeds the quantity threshold, then the percentage discount should apply to that item only. Other items do not meet quantity. Okay, I read it wrong. Okay, cool.
Max?
Yeah, can you clarify what you said about on the invoices having the merchant ID? So are we eliminating that relationship and implementing it elsewhere, or what? Yeah, can you just clarify that? Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, let me, does someone, I know some of y'all have had a schema diagram. Can I get someone to share your screen of the schema diagram from this project? Max, do you have that by any chance?
I do, let me pull it up.
Perfect. So what I was saying is that our invoices have this merchant ID right here, and that links to the merchants. So in that way, merchants have many invoices, but you can also see that merchants, if you go from merchant to item to invoice item to invoices, you can also see that merchants have many invoices through items through invoice items like this. So what I was saying is that when you are doing the calculation for, so I said like bulk discounts are only eligible on items that the merchant sells. So what you can't do is you can't say for this invoice, which bulk discounts are eligible by looking at this relationship, at that merchant ID relationship, because that doesn't indicate which item belongs to which merchant. So what you need to do instead is for each of the invoice items on the invoices, which item do they belong to and which merchant do they belong to? That's how you can figure out which bulk discounts are eligible for that specific invoice item.
Gotcha. And then just to clarify them, you mentioned that invoices could contain invoice items from multiple merchants. So does that mean that that this merchant ID, we should ignore it, or that we should like refactor and get rid of it everywhere?
So I would say ideally we should ignore this. I just don't, when I look at this, I don't really know what this merchant ID indicates. And this was just something in the data set that we didn't notice and didn't really consider. I don't really know what that would indicate. Like, would that be the merchant that like sold the merchant that sold the item? But the invoice isn't for a single item, it's for, yeah, see, I'm kind of like talking myself out of it. I can't really think of what that merchant ID indicates. Yeah, especially given the fact that we've created a project where the idea is that you can buy from multiple merchants. You can buy a candle from a candle maker, and you can buy a jewelry from a jewelry maker, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say you don't have to, like, if on the project you did something like for a merchant, when you calculate its revenue, you joins to, oh man, Zoom keeps, oh, stupid Zoom. Give me 1 second here. For a, if you calculated a merchant's revenue as a merchant's total revenue as look at all their invoices through this relationship, that's okay. You don't need to like go back and refactor all of your code. But if you did that for calculating on a specific invoice, so like on the merchant invoice show page, we should see like total revenue from this invoice for you is this many dollars. You shouldn't use this relationship because there could be items from other merchants that you wouldn't receive revenue from. So what you should do instead is go through these tables to get to invoices.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Before you stop sharing, Max, does anyone have any like follow-up questions? Or I see the chat's blowing up. Is there anything from there anyone wants to ask?
I have a clarification on this. I just want to make sure I understand. So in our last project, there's one merchant on an invoice. For this project, we're effectively changing our data set where there could be multiple merchants on an invoice. That's what I see in the chat.
You're not changing anything. We already, looking at this schema here, we already have the ability to have multiple merchants on the relation on this project through this. Notice that I'm not drawing any new relationships here. I'm just following the ones we already have. So you don't have to take out the merchant ID, but I think it might make things a little bit simpler and make a little bit more sense if you did take that out. I might think of this merchant ID as the merchant that like made the sale, and maybe merchants can sell other, this kind of indicates that merchants could sell other merchants' items, which doesn't really make sense. So just to reiterate, no, you're not changing your data set. You're just looking at the relationships in a different way. Other questions, clarifications on this? Joe?
Clarification question on the discount. Am I understanding this right? It's essentially like a tiered discount. Like if it reaches a certain item, like this tiered is applied, and if it reaches the next threshold, the next tiered is applied to any item that belongs to a merchant?
Yeah, you can think of it that way. Yeah, so if a merchant has multiple discounts in the system, so they don't have to have tiers. Where's my, there it is. Sorry, y'all, Zoom is like not letting me look at my screen. So if a merchant just has one bulk discount in the system, which is possible, then it's not really a tier. You just have one. But if you make two bulk discounts, then you would have tiers. So your bulk discounts would be like you get 10% off 5 items, but if you get 10 items, then you get 20% off, and then if you get 15, then you get 30, something like that. Okay. So yeah, there are tiers, and if you this example 4 right here is essentially saying like you could create a scenario where one of the tiers could never be reached. So if you create a tier with a greater quantity but a lower percentage, you would never apply this because this tier would it would make sense to like reach the next tier but get a lower discount.
Right, got it. Thanks.
One other question, Brian. Are we deploying this to Heroku?
I think for this I would yes, yeah. Let's say yes on this. You should be deploying this to Heroku. It's not in the project spec, but really that just kind of applies from here on out in Turing. We're kind of always expecting you to deploy, yeah. And once you get into mod 3, you'll talk more about some other tools around deploying that will make it slightly easier. Other questions? All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, then I will let you all go. Just to reiterate what I said before, if anything else comes up, please just put it. Please just put your questions in Slack, and and tag me and Tim, and we'll be happy to answer. I would fully expect that after this kickoff, you'll spend some time like working on this project and realize like, oh, there's something else I don't understand. That's totally fine. That's to be expected. Yeah. I would also recommend that you get as much work done on this as possible before the final assessment next week. I think ideally this project is like nearly complete by the weekend so that you can mostly focus on your final assessment and getting your portfolio and just kind of like tying up loose ends next week. So try to get as much done as you can as soon as possible. That will also make it easier to ask questions.